Among an endless ocean of parallel realities, some hosting many of our most beloved heroes and villains, all with varying levels of great strength and power, there is one dimension, forged around the very source of all creation, where infinite outcomes all converge to only one of two missions: to either defend that energy which rests at the center of the omniverse, or bend it so that its infinite power serves you alone. While Fortnite has captivated the world through its addictive gameplay, it just so happens to involve some of the biggest powerhouses in fiction, arguably at the most profound scale and scope ever seen. Both through its own lore and by involving the biggest icons from around pop culture, this game has been secretly establishing a hierarchy of power, weaving together the most recognizable worlds, forces of light and darkness, through a seemingly endless series of cross-promotions, manifesting as a multi-dimensional battleground. In this video, I hope to expose the vast power scaling implications made by one of the most successful pieces of media of all time. Hey everyone, Crisis here, and I hope that you enjoy my breakdown of the various feats and statements found in Fortnite to rank its heroes and villains from weakest to strongest. What I will not be doing is including every single character that has ever appeared or ever been added. I'm not including the random basketball players or musicians. What I will be talking about are the characters that within this game itself have clear or concise either power scaling statements from the official website or Twitter page, the games themselves, if they perform feats in tie-in comics or cinematics. I'll even be digging deeper into some of the quest dialogue that has some implications as to the power hierarchy here. I will also not be importing the quote-unquote main canon scaling for some of these third-party characters. So when I play someone like Iron Man or Batman, I'm not really looking at them in totality. I'm more so interpreting what their inclusion in Fortnite means for their power scaling specifically within that game itself, as well as if these live event threats do escalate or if there's some nuance there. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm hoping to hit 100K this year. You could also become a channel member to gain access to the private Discord server. Now, getting started, this is a good example of what we're going to be dealing with here in the future, because around in 2018, which is very early on in the game, this Shogun gear set is stated to have unmatched prowess. Easy dub, good foundation going forward. However, with successive events in the lore, Jonesy, who is an agent working for the Imagined Order, which are essentially one of the big bad factions within the game, they are tasked with controlling, monitoring, and manipulating the omniverse, which are all of these different fictional universes. So with his knowledge and experience, he goes about recruiting certain characters that are deemed as hunters, and they are brought into the events with the explicit task of hunting down the loopers, who are essentially the main characters or main heroes. It's a little bit vague who constitutes that group at this specific point in time, but either way, the hunters surpass the inclusion of someone like Shogun based on being the greatest hunters in the omniverse, or at least the best that Jones with his knowledge could recruit at the time. We have the Xenomorph, we have Ellen Ripley, we have Sarah Connor from Alien and Terminator respectively. Take out Xenomorphs and T-800s pretty easily. When you see these what appear to be standard weapons in Fortnite, they are just blatantly super strong, super powerful. We have instances in the Marvel crossover comic, or still with his powers. At this point, he's more powerful than ever, and he just gets down by a random Fortnite shotgun. And then later on, we also see that the actual gods of Fortnite, so characters like Zeus, they will just pick up and use whatever Fortnite assault rifles they have lying around, despite having godly power himself. So those are the weapons that Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, Michonne, and Daryl as well. Basically, all of these characters would be wielding when they're taking out characters like the T-800 or the Xenomorph. Funnily enough, Kratos, in one of these cinematics for the Zero Crisis event, which was actually directed by the Avengers Russo brothers, Kratos with his Leviathan climax does a massive leap overhead strike, and this random pancake man blocks it in its tracks. So if you think Kratos is this universal, multiversal character, it's unlocked and humbled by Pancake Man. I'm personally not willing to say random pancake guy is a top tier. Blame the Russos, they did Hulk dirty, they did Thor dirty, but that would also include Master Chief, who's recruited in these events. It's stated for Mandalorian that he's basically the last guy you want on your tail. The Predator is one of the most feared species in the galaxy. For many of the Marvel characters, they were released after the Hunters. These events take place, and we're looking at who's being recruited. I think that does carry some weight. This is the scaling from the Marvel crossover comics, a daughter of a character called Geno, who we'll talk about later, but she is known as the Imagined. She is shown fighting Captain Marvel Carol Danvers, so these two characters would be relative. Iron Man is then stated to be scared of Carol. It's also stated that they could incinerate Spider-Man, so the best you can say for Spider-Man is that he's sort of a part of this Marvel gang that is recruited by Jones or with the assistance of Jones. So maybe he's above the Hunters, at least 1v1. Within this tier itself, the Foundation, who is a member of the Seven, who they're basically like the Justice League of the Omniverse. He says that Iron Man's armor is impressive. He also says the same for Lex Luthor later in the DC Fortnite crossover comics. So these characters all have some parity with each other. The Imagined should be stronger than these characters because Iron Man says that he's scared of these two by extension. Now, Gunner, he fights the Foundation and She-Hulk on panel. They're shown clashing. They would all roughly scale to each other. Now, Gamora from the Guardians of the Galaxy, she was released after these events, and she does carry with her her trademark statement of being the deadliest woman in the galaxy. Now, you could say maybe some of these references, like with the Predator, are relative to only their home realities, but I'm going to try to make the most out of what this game gives me. It has Bigfoot and Ariana Grande as part of its lore. Now, interestingly, everyone's favorite Fortnite skin, Chun-Li, as well as Ryu from Street Fighter, are stated after the Marvel events on the official Fortnite website to be the perfect choice to recruit if you're trying to secure the 0 point. That was the mission of the Marvel heroes, and the Street Fighter characters are actually even better choices to defend the 0 point. However, released after that was the Batman and Fortnite crossover comics, which include Batman himself, of course, Batman Who Laughs, Deathstroke the Terminator, Catwoman, and Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. The events of this comic are narrated by an Imagined Order agent, so you'd think someone on the caliber of Jonesy, and while watching Batman and Snake Eyes fight, they are described as the perfect artists, and as you can imagine, an IO agent taking particular interest in these two characters, it only makes sense to place them as high as they are. Now, all of these characters within those comics present a certain relativity to each other, so Deathstroke and Batman fight in the comics. He considers Catwoman to be flawless. Batman Who Laughs as well. He fights the Foundation and is able to crack his faceplate. He technically lost the fight, but it was all part of his plan. We see Batman after the loop in his home reality. He does basically totally humble the Foundation, who again, Iron Man considered him impressive, etc. So it informs a tier gap between the characters of the Marvel event and the DC event, at least thus far. Now, around this time, we get a good statement for Wolverine. It's stated that he is the best there is at what he does. Again, his classic statement. It's killing. It's not very nice, right? So he is the best killer at this point in the timeline. It's debatable how far that goes. Batman, obviously, we have him being very impressive from the Imagined Order's perspective, but he does not kill people. Certainly Deathstroke does, so this Wolverine would at least be better than Deathstroke, potentially better than Snake Eyes. Now, Solid Snake, my boy, my goat, he comes along a little bit later, but he has a good statement in particular that he is unrivaled in covert ops. Now, if you look into what that means by definition, it does include operations with secrecy, intelligence gathering, stealth overall, but there is a combative element. I'm gonna run with it. Scorpion from Mortal Kombat as well, added much later relative to these DC and Marvel characters, stated that he is a threat to any mortal. Sorry, Kratos, but we will have a lot more powerful immortal characters. Batman obviously is immortal, so Scorpion should at least be a threat to him. That That would include characters like She-Hulk. Captain Marvel's not considered a divine being, really. And it makes a lot of sense because we're starting to get some immortal characters, especially with Thor and Storm. They are able to affect this ice torrent that would have killed every other character around them. Now, Wonder Woman in her loading screen, again around this time, is stated to lead the island's greatest warriors. Thor is most certainly a warrior, so Wonder Woman would scale to or above him. And then we have the Ice King himself, generated these super powerful storms, the leader of a task force whose mission was to imprison weapons or beings too powerful, too much of a threat to exist within the mortal universe. What's interesting is he does consider characters like Thor, just based on their ability to circumvent his storm, a threat too great for the Omniverse. So, like I said before, characters can get more powerful in the loop. They also get access to insanely strong weaponry. Kratos might be operating at sort of his base cannon power level at that point, as opposed to characters that are getting access to super powerful weaponry. The Storm King is officially referred to as Almighty, and in the lore, the Cube Queen commands the Storm King, rules over him, is sort of the main villain of that event. So within the cosmology, you have the Nothing first, which the Nothing represents the void before creation. Then the 0 point generates and creates infinite omniverses, infinite multiverses within the Omniverse, and the Nothing has a will of its own, wants to return everything to nothing. And that's essentially the mission of Storm King, the Cube Queen, Herald, etc. The Herald is the herald of the Nothing, so think Silver Surfer and Galactus. The problem is, though, is the 0 point at full power is able to always repel the Nothing. We see this when the Herald, using her power of Chrome, attacks the 0 point, doesn't destroy it. So at full power, the 0 point reboots itself. In spite of everything we know about the Cube Queen, about the Herald, etc., later on, we're going to see characters that are true threats to the 0 point itself. That would include the Kaiju and Mecha Team Leader Mark 1. This is again stated in the Marvel comic that the Kaiju is a threat to the 0 point itself, the 0 point being all realities. So we're talking about an insane level of power that, for all you could say about the Nothing and its attempts to be a threat to the 0 point, the Kaiju and Mecha Team Leader who defeated the Kaiju by extension would represent a greater level of power. Now, Galactus, he was going to absorb all of the 0 point. He was on the verge of doing so, of subsuming its power, which would have annihilated every single reality, according to Iron Man. After this, though, this skin, Geometrik, is stated to harness the ultimate power of being cubed. So you'd think the Cube Queen would wield that herself, but evidently it's this random skin, and evidently that is more powerful than the Nothing, per this statement being made after Galactus's event. And nearly a whole year after the Galactus event, Naruto was added to the game, with the nine-tailed fox spirit hosted inside the ninja being called All-Powerful on the Fortnite website. Now, whether Naruto can channel that power to the fullest, I'll leave that up to you. At the very least, maybe this glider can beat Galactus. A linchpin for the following characters would include Geno. He would actually do battle with the Omega Knight over and over. The Omega Knight has a statement after all of these events of being the greatest warrior in any reality. He would fight a snapshot or perfect copy of Geno over and over to prove that. Iron Man in that comic crossover, after being attacked by Genos, compares him to Thanos. Now, Iron Man is from 616. He's from the main comic book universe. So talking about two totally different Thanos. Now, why didn't Omega Knight show up to stop Galactus? Your guess is as good as mine. After this, we get more MCU inclusion, Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch, and it is stated that only beings with true power could navigate the kaleidoscope dimension. It's after the inclusion of the Omega Knight, but the Omega Knight's statement comes after basically every character under him. He also has the lore of fighting and surviving against Genos multiple times, who could one-shot, let's say, someone like Iron Man. We then have Mephisto. He says that a Sorcerer Supreme's power is nothing to him. Now, of course, he is a demon. He could be lying. Gojo features his statement from his franchise. Wanda, Strange, they are undoubtedly sorcerers. So Gojo would be right there next to Mephisto as more powerful than these two sorcerers. Darth Vader was a great statement in Fortnite that he will show the island true power. So Geno showing up, the Omega Knight being the most fearless, greatest warrior in any reality. They hadn't seen true power until Vader showed up to the island. He's just the strongest in Fortnite up to that point. Goku and Vegeta, the characters from Dragon Ball, basically right after Darth Vader, they are now showing the island true power. The island has never seen power unto their own. Funnily enough, though, sandwiched between these Dragon Ball inclusions would be Black Adam. His DC Extended Universe Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson version has, again, his famous statement, the hierarchy of power on the island is about to change as soon as Black Adam shows up. So again, implying he is the strongest. Now, Goku Black was added after Goku. He's just officially said to have unrivaled might and power beyond comprehension. Even years apart when they added this skin back to the shop, Goku Black in Fortnite lore is more powerful than Beerus, more powerful than Goku, even with mastered Ultra Instinct, and he would even be stronger than Black Adam, who's implied to be stronger than Darth Vader. Now, around here in the lore is where we would get the Society, which would include characters like Peter Griffin. Jones, who is basically the main character of Fortnite, he notes that these Society members are wielding medallions and that it would be a good idea for the Looper or the hero player character to get some of these medallions as well, implying that they need to power up to fight the Society. Maybe that implies Solid Snake is a lot more impressive because he was recruited along with the Ninja Turtles and along with some other Marvel characters to either fight the Society, free Peely, who is one of Jones's allies, fight off Doctor Doom. Maybe characters like Solid Snake are a lot higher. After the Society, we have the gods of the Fortnite Island. So characters like Ares, Apollo, Poseidon, Hades, and of course Zeus is the most powerful among them. They completely reshape the island. They also defeat various members of the Society canonically. So they basically usurp them in terms of power level. I also think it says a lot that considering this is the plane of the 0 point and basically where all of the most impactful, powerful characters and events show up to either defend or attack all of reality, the entire omniverse. It does say a lot that these are at least the lowercase g gods of that reality. Aang and Korra from Avatar, the two main avatars from that franchise, are just outright stated to have powers that rival the gods blatantly. In fact, Korra's waterbending is stated to surpass Poseidon's domain over the ocean, over the water. There was a lot of hype around Avatar's resurgence, a lot of people power scaling it, and I'm sure a lot of them would be very happy to hear that there is an argument for at least a version of Aang to be more powerful than Goku, Darth Vader, far stronger than Kratos. And again, I want to keep in mind that all of these characters surpass beings that are genuine threats to the 0 point, which is just everything. I swear this is just the craziest game ever made. Now, yet after these events, we get the Mad Max inspired chapter of the game, with the main threat being Megalo Don. Now, it's stated again in quest dialogue by Hope and Jones that the Looper actually, despite their victories over Zeus, Ares, over Hades, etc., you're not even in fighting shape in the context of combating Megalo Don. Now we're getting into true top of the top peak fiction. This is Dr. Doom. I have a whole video about Dr. Doom and his Fortnite power scaling especially. This is Dr. Doom specifically from those Marvel tie-in comics where he did wield a shard of the 0 point, which would make him very, very powerful. Not as powerful as his Doombot, which was implied to have defeated Galactus, usurped Megalodon with the power of Pandora's box, and that the real Victor Von Doom was augmenting his armor to take in even more of Pandora's box's power. Now, it's around this time, if you look at the Shogun-X events, they essentially scale to much larger shards of the 0 point. The 0 point is just described as the greatest, most infinite, most unimaginable power source in any reality. Dr. Doom, for instance, in that Marvel comic, he was holding like a hand-sized chunk of it, Shogun-X. They're fighting each other with massive pieces of it by comparison. However, Dr. Doom proper, with his Pandora box-amped armor, he is at that point the #1 fictional powerhouse. And you can watch the various videos I have been a part of explaining that. But even still, even later on, we have the Dark Presence, the last big bad. All scaling at this point is downstream from him. Not only does he also wield a giant 0-point shard, likely far larger than that shown in the Shogun-X fight. But the Dark Presence also has various statements from characters with intimate knowledge of him and his realm, as well as, again, Hope and Jones, which they feel that despite everything they've seen, every hero that they can recruit on their side, they have little hope of defeating the Dark Presence. So characters that scale to the Dark Presence in any way would be insanely powerful. That's where Kong and Godzilla come in, because really they were doing a lot of the heavy lifting during that live event. They were taking hits from, they were staggering, blasting the Dark Presence with their energy attacks. They were on the front line. So this is a character wielding a larger chunk of 0-point power than any villain up till now had, and is an escalation from Doctor Doom and all of his feats. To survive hits from him, as Kong and Godzilla do, that's pretty insane. The same could also be said for this upgraded Mecha team leader. We also have Fat Homer. We have the Bride from Kill Bill, which is insane. And we have Superman, DCU, David Cornsweat Superman. So they all as well scale to the Dark Presence. Homer was able to fight off one of his tentacles. The Bride was able to slice one apart. Superman was able to heat vision one of them. The Mighty Morphin Megazord takes a hit from it. All of these characters do pretty remarkable damage, considering just how powerful the Dark Presence really is. It does say a lot. Now, Homer in base, he has a remote control that is augmented by a shard of the 0-point. It can alter reality, makes him essentially the lord of the island. And while it is a lot smaller than what Doctor Doom held earlier, maybe you could chalk it up to the Simpsons just having that like Toon Force where they can just do nonsensical things all the time. Giant fat Homer is a moron. Not saying a lot, but he could more intelligently use the remote in a versus battle scenario. And while the Dark Voyager with his cube power is positioned as the next threat overall, we currently, as of recording this video, don't know enough about what he is, what he's about, or what power source he's drawing on, but it is probably pretty safe to say he will be above the Dark Presence. It's hard to imagine. Now, we have some stragglers and some new additions. So around this time, the Xenomorph was stated to rule the island. They brought back a new Xenomorph skin, so similar lore to what the gods had back then. We also have JJK skins that were added recently. Their most powerful attacks cannot be destroyed. That would upscale them potentially from characters like Kong and Godzilla who had been added by then. And around this time, in August 2025, the One Punch Man stated to bring serious power to the game's world. When he was originally added to the game, a lot of people took notice of his status as some kind of hologram and took that to imply that he could not actually be tangibly featured in the game because he's just so powerful that it wouldn't make sense for anything or anyone to defeat him here. For the sake of even this video, that seems like a stretch to me. Besides, we have other examples like DCU Superman, who is genuinely invulnerable to anything except the almighty Boogie Bomb. But if you do consider him as having serious power, maybe you could say his strength is considerable to threats of this era in the game's publishing. The recent Bleach inclusion basically implies that anyone who fights Ichigo at this point, it's wraps, it's GG's, it's over. If you want to interpret that as a canon statement, the Bride is still currently on the island. After a certain point, the loop just stopped being a mechanic of the island. So when characters show up, they're coming from their home dimension. I think this was showcased very well, very thoroughly in the most recent live event where Jones is explicitly pulling these characters from their home realities. They're getting a call and they are arriving from different universes to provide backup. There's other implications in the lore to suggest that snapshots as well are no longer being made. So when it comes to this Ichigo statement, I would say that it only includes characters that are canonically, blatantly still on the island, which would include the Bride, as she does have quests ongoing. She is on the island. You can talk to her, you can meet her. If the Bride were to run into Ichigo, it would be over. But Superman is presumably back in his home dimension. Of course, you have the main characters, Jones and Hope. Now, their placements, they might be just super low tier because they're constantly recruiting people. The loopers usually do all the heavy lifting. Maybe you could say with certain weaponry. Hope in particular is impressive. She was able to affect the giant Pandora box amped Doctor Doom. It's actually stated that Captain America's shield, when it's added to the game, it is upgraded. It has extra abilities, and that is what Hope used to to essentially redirect Dr. Doom's energy back at him to affect him. And while recording this video, the South Park collab dropped, which just so happened to name Butters as the greatest supervillain the world has ever seen. Unless this is only referring to the utter depths of his malevolence, you could unironically say that a character from South Park is in some way, shape, or form canonically more powerful than a super mega amped version of Doctor Doom from Marvel Comics. In no way do I doubt that this game will only get crazier after this video is uploaded. Unfortunately, there are a lot of characters like Doom Guy or the Elder Scrolls protagonist who, as far as Fortnite is concerned, they're just skins. They don't have their own lore or impressive statements. So like I said, I can't really rank them outside of just applying their canon power scaling, which if I were to do that with all of the collaborations in this game, I would basically just be power scaling literally all of fiction. But if you like and subscribe, you never know, maybe one day. With all that said, I hope you were entertained. I hope you learned something about this game that we're all addicted to by now. And with all that said, I'll see you all next time.